Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to close your eyes for just a moment. Go ahead, close them, and I want you to think about that voice. You know the one I'm talking about? That voice that whispers to you in the middle of the night when you can't sleep. That voice that tells you you're not good enough. That voice that reminds you of every failure, every mistake, every time you fell short. That voice that says, maybe you should just give up, maybe this dream is too big, maybe you're not meant for more than this. Now open your eyes. Because today, right here, right now, we're going to change that voice. We are going to transform it. We're going to take that same mind that has been your biggest critic and turn it into your greatest champion. And I'm going to tell you something that might sound simple, but it will change everything if you truly understand it. Your thoughts are not just random electrical impulses firing in your brain. Your thoughts are the architects of your destiny. Your thoughts are the blueprints of your future. Your thoughts, quite literally, create your life. You see, I come from a place where dreaming wasn't always encouraged. I come from a world where staying small felt safe, where blending in was easier than standing out, where the path was already laid out and all you had to do was follow it. But something inside me refused to accept that. Something inside me kept whispering, even when the world was shouting, that there was more, that I was meant for more, that my thoughts, my dreams, my vision of who I could become mattered more than what anyone else thought I should be. And let me tell you something about thoughts. They are the most powerful force in the universe when it comes to shaping your individual reality. Every single thing you see around you, every building, every invention, every piece of art, every innovation started as a thought in someone's mind. The chair you're sitting on right now, someone thought of that. The phone in your pocket, someone imagined it before it existed. The very room we're in, it was once just an idea. Everything is created twice. First in the mind, then in reality. But here's what most people don't understand. Your life works the same way. The life you're living right now is a direct manifestation of the thoughts. You've been thinking for the past months, years, maybe decades. If you want to know what you've been thinking about, look at your life. Your relationships, your bank account, your career, your health, your happiness. It's all a reflection. It's all a mirror showing you what's been going on inside your head. And I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, but you don't understand my circumstances. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know the obstacles I'm facing. You don't know how hard it is. And you're right. I don't know your specific story, but I know struggle. I know what it feels like to be underestimated. I know what it feels like to walk into rooms where you're not supposed to be. I know what it feels like to have people look at you and make assumptions about what you can and cannot do based on where you come from, what you look like, or what your background is. Let me take you back to a moment in my life. I was 17 years old and I had just won a beauty pageant. Now I know what that sounds like. It sounds glamorous, right? It sounds like a fairy tale. But let me tell you what was really happening in my mind. I was terrified. I was standing there with a crown on my head, and all I could think about was how I didn't deserve it. How it must have been a mistake. How they were going to figure out any minute now that I wasn't special, that I wasn't talented, that I was just a girl from India who got lucky. That voice in my head was so loud. It was deafening. And it told me things that if I had listened to them, would have destroyed every opportunity that was coming my way. It told me I wasn't smart enough. It told me I wasn't talented enough. It told me that girls like me didn't become international stars. It told me to play it safe, to take the easier path, to settle for less than what my heart was screaming for. But somewhere deep inside, there was another voice, a quieter voice, a voice that said, what if you could? A voice that said, what if you're capable of more than you can even imagine right now? A voice that said, what if the only thing standing between you and your dreams is a decision to change what you believe about yourself? And that's when my journey really began. Not when I won the crown. Not when I got my first acting role. Not when I moved to Mumbai or when I landed in Hollywood. My journey began the moment I decided to change my thoughts. The moment I decided that I would no longer be a prisoner to the limitations other people tried to put on me, or worse, the limitations I was putting on myself. You see, the scientific principle that explains this, it's called neuroplasticity. your brain is not fixed. It's not set in stone. The neural pathways in your brain, the patterns of thinking that feels so automatic, so natural, so much like just who you are, can be changed. They can be rewired, they can be transformed. Every time you think a new thought, every time you challenge an old belief, every time you choose to see possibility, instead of limitation, you are literally creating new pathways in your brain. Think about that for a moment. You are not stuck. You are not destined to think the same thoughts you've always thought. You are not condemned to live the same patterns you've always lived. You have the power right now, in this very moment, to think a different thought. And that different thought can lead to a different action. And that different action can lead to a different result. And those different results, compounded over time, create a completely different life. But here's where it gets challenging. Because changing your thoughts isn't UST about positive thinking. It's not about standing in front of a mirror saying affirmations while you don't believe a word you're saying. It's not about pretending everything is perfect when your world is falling apart. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is something much deeper, much more powerful, and yet much more difficult. I'm talking about becoming aware of your thoughts. I'm talking about catching yourself when that negative voice starts speaking and asking yourself, is this true? Is this helpful? Is this moving me toward who I want to become or away from it? I'm talking about the discipline of redirecting your mind every single time it tries to take you down a path that doesn't serve you. I'm talking about the daily, hourly, minute-by-minute practice of choosing thoughts that empower you instead of thoughts that diminish you. And let me be clear about something. This is not easy. If it were easy, everyone would do it. If it were easy, everyone would be living their dream life. If it were easy, we wouldn't see so many people settling for lives that don't excite them, relationships that don't fulfill them, careers that don't inspire them. The reason most people don't change their thoughts is because it requires constant vigilance. It requires you to become the guardian of your own mind. It requires you to stand watch at the door of your consciousness and decide what you will and will not allow in. I remember when I first started working in Livewood, I was the new girl. I didn't come from a film family. I didn't have the connection. I didn't have the experience. And there were people, lots of people, who were very happy to remind me of that. They would say things like, she's just a beauty queen. She can't act. She'll be gone in a year. And you know what? Part of me believed them. Part of me thought they were right. But then I made a decision. I decided that I would not allow other people's limited thinking to become my limited thinking. I decided that their doubt could not become my doubt. I decided that their vision of who I was could not override my vision of who I was becoming. And that decision changed everything. Because here's what happens when you start to change your thoughts. The world around you starts to change too. Not because the world is different, but because you're different. You start to see opportunities that were always there, but you couldn't see them before because your mind was focused on obstacles. You start to meet people who can help you, who believe in you, who want to support you, because you're finally vibrating at a frequency that attracts that kind of energy. You start to take actions that you never would have taken before, because your new thoughts create new courage, new confidence, new conviction. And let me tell you about fear, because fear is the biggest thought pattern that holds people back. Fear disguises itself as logic. It disguises itself as being realistic. It disguises itself as protecting you. But what fear really does is keep you small. What fear really does is rob you of your potential. What fear really does is steal the life you were meant to live and replace it with the life you settled for. I've been afraid so many times. I was afraid when I decided to pursue acting. I was afraid when I got my first role and thought I might fail in front of millions of people. I was afraid when I decided to move to America and try to make it in Hollywood. I was afraid when I walked into rooms where I was the only brown face, the only person with an accent, the only one who didn't fit the traditional mold of what they were looking for. I was afraid every single time I took a risk, made a bold choice or step outside my comfort zone. But here's what I learned about fear. Fear is not a stop sign. Fear is a compass. Fear shows you exactly where you need to go, because the things that scare you the most are usually the things that will grow you the most. The opportunities that terrify you are usually the opportunities that will transform you. The dreams that seem impossible are usually the dreams that are specifically designed for you. So I started to reframe my thoughts about fear. Instead of thinking I'm afraid, therefore I shouldn't do this, I started thinking I'm afraid. Therefore this must be important. This must matter. This must be exactly what I need to do. And that single shift in thinking changed the entire trajectory of my career and my L. Think about the thoughts you think about yourself. Do you think thoughts of worthiness or unworthiness? Do you think thoughts of capability or incapability? Do you think thoughts of possibility or impossibility? Because I promise you this, whatever you think about yourself consistently becomes your reality. If you think you're not good enough, you will unconsciously sabotage opportunities to prove yourself right. If you think you can't succeed, you will find evidence everywhere to support that belief. If you think you're destined to struggle, struggle is what you will attract. But the opposite is also true. If you think you are worthy, if you think you are capable, if you think you deserve success and happiness and love and abundance, your brain will start finding ways to make that true. Your brain will start noticing opportunities. Your brain will start solving problems. Your brain will start connecting dots that you couldn't connect before. Because your brain is always trying to prove your dominant thoughts. Right. There's a story I want to share with you. When I was trying to break into Hollywood, people told me it was impossible. They said, there's no space for you. There's no room for someone like you in American entertainment. You should be grateful for what you have in India and stop trying to be something you're not. And I could have believed that. I could have let those thoughts become my thoughts. I could have accepted their version of reality as the only real. But instead, I asked myself a different question. Instead of asking, can I do this? I started asking, how can I do this? What would I need to believe about myself to make this possible? What thoughts would I need to think? What actions would I need to take? Who would I need to become? And those questions changed everything, because questions are thoughts too. And the quality of the questions you ask yourself determines the quality of your life. You want to know the secret to achieving anything you want in life? It's not talent. It's not luck. It's not privilege. It's not connections. Those things can help, but they're not the secret. The secret is learning to think like the person who already has what you want. The secret is cultivating the mindset of success before you have the evidence of success. The secret is believing in the invisible until you can make it visible. And this is where most people get stuck. They say, I'll believe it when I see it. Show me the results, then I'll change my thinking. But that's backward. You have to change your thinking first. You have to believe it before you can see it. You have to think the thoughts of the person you want to become before you become that person. You have to cultivate the mindset of abundance before you experience abundance. You have to feel worthy before the world treats you as worthy. I want to talk to you about a concept that changed my life. It's called the law of assumption. The idea is simple but profound. Whatever you assume to be true about yourself and your life will eventually become true. If you assume you're lucky, you'll notice more good luck. If you assume people like you, you'll interpret their actions more favorably. If you assume you're meant for great things, you'll spot opportunities for greatness everywhere. If you assume you're unlucky, you'll only remember the bad things that happen. If you assume people don't like you, you'll misinterpret neutral actions as negative. If you assume you're meant to struggle, you'll unconsciously create struggle in your life. Your assumptions, your habitual patterns of thought create your experience of reality. So I started assuming I was exactly where I needed to be. I started assuming that every setback was a setup for a comeback. I started assuming that every closed door was redirecting me to a better door. I started assuming that I was talented, capable, resilient, and destined for extraordinary things. And guess what happened? My life started reflecting those assumptions back to me now. I want to be very honest with you about something. Changing your thoughts doesn't mean you won't face challenges. It doesn't mean you won't experience pain. It doesn't mean everything will be easy. What it means is that you'll face those challenges with a different mindset. You'll interpret that pain differently. You'll move through difficulty with resilience instead of defeat. I've faced rejection after rejection. I've had people tell me, no more times than I can count. I've had movies that failed. I've had plans that fell apart. I've had moments where I questioned everything and wondered if I was crazy for believing in myself when the evidence was saying otherwise. But in those moments, my thoughts were my anchor. My thoughts were my strength. My thoughts reminded me that failure is not final. Rejection is not personal. And setbacks are not permanent. There's a phrase I live by. The universe doesn't say no, it says not yet, or I have something better. When you start thinking this way, every disappointment becomes bearable. Every obstacle becomes temporary. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to grow stronger, wiser, more capable. Let me tell you about the time I auditioned for a role that I wanted desperately. I prepared for weeks. I gave everything I had in that room. And I didn't get it. I was devastated. My first thought was, see, you're not good enough. They were right about you. But then I caught that thought. I recognized it for what it was, an old pattern trying to resurface. And I replaced it with a new thought. That role wasn't meant for me. Something better is coming. This rejection is protection. And you know what? 3 months later, I got offered a role that was 10 times better. A role that challenged me in ways I never imagined. A role that opened doors I didn't even know existed. But I never would have been available for that opportunity if I had gotten the first role. The rejection I thought was the worst thing that could happen was actually the best thing that could happen. But I only know that now because I chose to think thoughts that empowered me instead of thoughts that defeated me. This is what I want you to understand. Your thoughts are creating your future right now, not tomorrow, not next week, right now. The thoughts you're thinking as you hear these words are either building the life you want or maintaining the life you have. They're either moving you forward or keeping you stuck. They're either expanding your possibilities or reinforcing your limitations. And here's the beautiful thing, you get to choose. You have complete control over this one thing. You might not be able to control what happens to you. You might not be able to control what other people say or do. You might not be able to control the economy, the industry, the market, or the circumstances you were born into. But you can control what you think about it all. You can control the meaning you assign to events. You can control whether you see yourself as a victim or a victor. You can control whether you focus on what's wrong or what's possible. I grew up in India, in a culture where there were very specific expectations about what a woman could do, should do, was allowed to do. And I could have let those cultural thoughts become my thoughts. I could have accepted those limitations as truth. But instead, I questioned them. I challenged them. I refused to let someone else's limited thinking determine my unlimited potential, and that's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to question every thought that limits you. Every thought that tells you you can't. Every thought that tells you it's too late. Every thought that tells you you're not qualified, not ready, not enough. Question those thoughts. Challenge them. Ask yourself, is this thought serving me? Is this thought moving me toward my goals or away from them? Is this thought based on truth or fear? Because here's what I've discovered. Most of our limiting thoughts aren't even ours. They're borrowed. They're inherited. They're absorbed from parents, teachers, society, media, friends, colleagues. They're not truths about who we are. They're just programs running in our subconscious mind that we never thought to question. They're like outdated software that's slowing down the entire system, and it's time to upgrade. Let me give you a practical example of how this works. Let's say you have a thought, I'm not a confident person. Okay, let's examine that thought. Where did it come from? Maybe a teacher once told you that you were too quiet. Maybe a parent said you were shy. Maybe you had an embarrassing moment as a child, and you decided that meant something about who you are. But here's the truth. That thought is not a fact. It's an interpretation. It's a story. It's a pattern. And just like any pattern, it can be changed. So you start replacing that thought. Every time you catch yourself thinking, I am not confident, you pause. You recognize the thought and you replace it with a new one. I'm becoming more confident every day. Notice I didn't say I'm the most confident person in the world, because your brain won't believe that if you're not there yet. But your brain can believe that you're growing, evolving, becoming. And that thought, repeated consistently, will start to create new neural pathways. It will start to change your behavior. It will start to change your reality. You'll start noticing moments when you act confidently. You'll start reinforcing those moments. You'll start building evidence that supports your new thought. And over time, the old thought loses its power, the old pattern dissolves, and you become someone who genuinely believes they are confident. Not because you faked it, but because you consistently chose thoughts that aligned with who you wanted to become. This is the work. This is the practice. This is how you change your thoughts and change your life. It's not glamorous, it's not quick, it's not easy, but it's worth it, because the life on the other side of this transformation is beyond anything you can imagine right now. I want to. Talk about gratitude for a moment. Because gratitude is one of the most powerful thought patterns you can cultivate. When you think thoughts of gratitude, when you focus on what you have, instead of what you lack, something magical happens in your brain.